Good evening, President-elect Obama. My name is Bill Porter. I'm an American citizen. We need change we can believe in, and we need it now. This is your first leadership opportunity. The United Auto Workers Job Suicide Pact is threatening to bankrupt Detroit. 30 years ago, Reverend Jim Jones, the founder of the People's Temple, convinced nearly 1,000 people to commit mass suicide in Jonestown, Guyana. They drank poison-laced Kool-Aid, and they all died. 20 years ago, Charles Bryant, the head of the International Association of Machinists Union, led the union into bankrupting Eastern Airlines. 35,000 Americans lost their jobs. Today, the UAW, led by Rod Gettelfinger, are refusing to renegotiate their super-rich labor contracts that run into the year 2011 and are thus threatening to bankrupt the auto industry. It's not the only issue. There's 8 separate issues that need to be dealt with in order to save the auto industry. This is clearly one of them. We dealt with all 8 on a blog about 2 weeks ago. But Eastern Airlines used to be the largest passenger airline in the world, serving 3 continents and 26 countries. The big 3 automakers used to be the dominant auto industry in the world. Unionized mass job suicide has exported more American jobs to foreign countries than all other sources combined. Our shoes, textiles, television, clothing, computer, cars, and numerous other items are either manufactured or assembled by millions of foreign workers. Those jobs used to belong to millions of American workers, except that the unions priced them literally out of the country. Make no mistake, the UAW workers are fine, hard-working Americans. However, they're no finer. They're no more hard-working than other Americans. Rod Gettelfinger has been arguing mindlessly that the UAW employees should be paid 3 times the wage rate of comparable blue-collar workers in the rest of America. That doesn't make sense, and it's unfair, and it's going to bankrupt another American industry. President-elect Obama, please take the Kool-Aid away from Mr. Gettelfinger. You promised change we could believe in. We need it, and we need it now. Please get started. If the UAW, who we all know put lots of money in your campaign, should not be in a position to hold this country hostage. The big donor unions have been harming American interests for decades. This book talks about one of the main reasons that we don't have a comprehensive energy plan today is because of the union interests in Detroit. We need change, and we need it now. This is your first crisis, and as a result, your first major opportunity to demonstrate leadership. Ironically, in a similar way, in 1981, newly elected President Ronald Reagan faced a similar circumstance. The Air Traffic Controllers Union had threatened to shut down the airlines in our country, hold the country hostage, unless their wages were essentially doubled. Fortunately, President Reagan rose to the occasion, courageously and boldly told the union workers, either be back on the job in 48 hours or you'll be fired. They didn't come back, and they were fired. Not only did he solve the crisis, and not only does the auto workers crisis need to be solved, but the bigger point, and the one that's important for your presidency, is that Ronald Reagan, by demonstrating leadership very early on in his presidency, created a tremendous momentum for other non-related issues that Ronald Reagan would deal with later on in his administration. And that's what's at stake for you. You will either be perceived as a strong, courageous leader or not. And so this is a golden opportunity that presents itself. We hope that you'll take advantage of it and seize the moment. But when it comes to Detroit, speaking as a citizen, and I believe I speak for most of the citizens in this country, we're not interested in having Detroit just survive and hang on by its fingernails. There's not a reason in the world that Detroit shouldn't be the dominant player in the auto industry for the entire planet. However, anybody would know that they cannot pay wage levels that are totally out of sync with their industry and expect to remain competitive, much less dominant. As President-elect, we know that you're here to represent all Americans, not just the privileged few in Detroit. The fact of the matter is, as we're talking this evening, there are millions of Americans who would love, they would be so thankful to work for a fraction of what the workers in Detroit are making. If people could get a job at $25, $30, $35 an hour, they would be ecstatic. And yet in Detroit, total wage benefits are over $74 an hour. That doesn't make sense. We cannot wait until after the inauguration. George Bush has not stepped up to deal with this issue head on. You need to fill that leadership vacuum. Seize it as an opportunity, because that's what it is, and represent all Americans. When I wrote this book, I spent 4 years researching it. I had no idea at the time how relevant this book would be to our country and to your presidency. It deals with the last 4 Democratic presidents, all of whom, like yourself, had a tremendous advantage in the first 2 years of their presidency, and that was that the Democratic Party had a huge majority in both the House and the Senate, and of course controlled the presidency as well. This book explores the centerpiece legislation for all 4 of those presidents. For President Kennedy, it was the Apollo moon launch. For President Johnson, the Great Society. For President Carter, it was an attempt at a comprehensive energy plan. And with President Clinton, it was an attempt at comprehensive health care. You would have thought that all 4 could have gotten their agendas passed. But what's interesting in the book, and what's relevant to your presidency and to our future in our country, is that there were 10 significant common factors in all 4 of those instances. Not surprisingly, President Kennedy and Johnson did all 10 exactly the same. President Carter and President Clinton did all 10 just the opposite, with just the opposite results. We can't afford presidents who don't pay attention to the past. I sent you this book a couple months ago. I hope that you have read it or will read it, because everything is at stake. There's never been a time in recent history short of World War where our country has been challenged with so many crises. The American people will follow a leader, and this is your opportunity to demonstrate that you, in fact, are a leader. President-elect Obama, I pray for you as a citizen. I pray for our country that you will rise to the occasion, rise to the challenge, and become the leader that we need, and the leader that will represent all of the American people, not just certain privileged special interest groups. I thank you for listening, and good night.